Hello S5 and 6 and welcome to Higher History 2020-21. We'd like to thank you for selecting Higher History this year. This PowerPoint is just going to talk you through an introduction to Higher History, what we'll be covering this year and what the expectations for you as pupils are. Okay, so Higher History, this is an introduction to Higher History. So in total, your mark in Higher History is out of 110 marks. This is how your marks break down. So the exam itself is worth 80 marks. The exam is now broken down into two papers. Paper 1 is where you will write 2 essays. Each of these essays is worth 22 marks each, so that gives you a total of 44 marks in Paper 1. Paper 2 is 4 source questions, well 3 source questions and 1 knowledge based question now. They are worth 36 marks. And then you have your assignment, which we'll go over as well, but is very similar to your National 5 assignment. That is a topic of your choice where you get to use a resource sheet as well, and that is worth 30 marks. So in total, your mark in Higher History is out of 110. Now, Higher History, the final exam, Paper 1. Let's start with Paper 1. So this is where you will write 2 essays. You'll have 1 hour 30 minutes to write these 2 essays. Now, these essays come from 2 of our units which we will cover. The first one being the British unit, which is Britain 1851 to 1951. You need to write 1 essay on the British unit and you'll have a choice of 3 to choose from. You'll then have the European and World unit, which we will look at in terms of the Cold War. And again, you'll need to write 1 essay for this and you'll have a choice of 3 to choose from. Now, the Cold War. What will we be covering in the Cold War? What is the Cold War all about, for those of you who aren't sure? Now, superpower foreign policy after 1945, the growth of international tension, the development of the policy of détente, and the end of the Cold War in Europe in 1989. It's all about ideology, conflict, and diplomacy. Now, the Cold War was ultimately a conflict between the United States of America and the Soviet Union. Now, the 6 sections which we will look at. Our first section, we'll look at the reasons for the Cold War actually starting. So, after World War II, why does the Cold War begin? Section 2 looks at Soviet policy and control in Eastern Europe up to 1961. So how did the Soviet Union keep countries under their control in Eastern Europe and how effectively did they do this? Section 3 looks at the reasons for the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. So the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviet Union placed missiles in Cuba, why did this happen? What were the reasons for it? Section 4 will look at the war in Vietnam that America got involved in. So again, why did the war take place? What happened in Vietnam? Section 5 we will look at why the superpowers attempted to manage the Cold War from 1962 to 1979. So why was there a bit more diplomacy taking place? Why did both sides work together a bit more? And then Section 6 we'll look at the reasons for the end of the Cold War. Our British topic is Britain 1851 to 1951. Now, what this is all about is the development of the United Kingdom into modern democracy and the development of the role of the state in the welfare of its citizens. So it's all about authority, ideology and rights. Now again, there are 6 sections in the British topic which we will cover. Section number 1 looks at why Britain became more democratic. So what were the reasons that Britain became a more democratic country? Section 2 looks at how democratic Britain became. So how do we measure democracy in terms of people being able to vote, the role of the House of Lords, the role of MPs. Very, very important to democracy in Britain. So how democratic did Britain become in certain areas? Section 3, which some of you will recognise from National 5 as well, is why some women were given the vote in 1918. So we explore this in a bit more detail, looking at the key reasons women were awarded the vote in 1918. Section 4, we look at why the Liberal government introduced social welfare reforms. So the Liberal government were in place before World War I, so why did they introduce social welfare reforms? And we'll look at the effectiveness of these reforms. So what were the reforms, what did they actually do, and how effective were they in helping people in Britain? And the last section, Section 6, looks at the effectiveness of the labour reforms. So the labour reforms were put in place after World War II. How effective were these? How well did they help the people of Britain? So that went over a wee bit in terms of what we will cover in Britain and the Cold War topic. So that is your paper 1 in your exam. So that's your essay topics there. Now your paper 2 in your exam is where you'll have 4 questions. Now this also lasts for 1 hour 30 minutes. Now in this paper you'll be asked only on the Scottish unit, which is Migration and Empire. Now in this paper you'll have 3 source questions to answer. So you'll have a how fully question, which again for those of you who have done National 5 before is just a bit more advanced in terms of what you were answering there in terms of how fully question. So you'll have a how fully question which is worth 10 marks. Again, you'll recognise there the evaluate the usefulness question, which again is just a bit more advanced from National 5, which is worth 8 marks. You then have a how much question, which is a different source skill, which we will also be looking at as well. That is worth 10 marks. And then the last part of this paper is an explain question. Now again, for those of you who have done National 5, the explain question is just building on what you're doing at National 5 as well, and that is worth 8 marks. So in total, this paper, you'll see there, is out of 36 marks. Now, in the Migration Empire topic, Migration Empire is 1830 to 1939, so this is our Scottish topic. Now, what is this all about? This is about the population movement and socio-economic change in Scotland and abroad between 1830 and 1939. So it's all about empire, migration and identity. Now in this topic there are only 4 sections which we will cover. This is the topic which we will be starting with, so this will be our first topic. Now the 4 sections are this. Firstly, the migration of Scots. So why did Scots move from one place to another? Why did they leave their home to move somewhere else? So looking at why Scots moved to other places in Scotland and why Scots moved abroad. Section 2 looks at the experience of immigrants in Scotland, so the different groups of immigrants that came to Scotland. There were lots of different groups of immigrants, but the main ones which we will look at will be the Irish, the Italians, Jews, Lithuanians. What sort of experience did they have in Scotland? Section 3 looks at the impact of Scots immigrants on the empire, so Scottish people that went abroad, what sort of impact did they have on countries in the empire? And the main countries which we will look at that they had a big impact in are Canada, India, Australia and New Zealand. So what sort of effect did Scots have on these countries? And the last section, section 4, looks at the effect of migration and empire on Scotland to 1939. So what sort of effect did migration have on Scotland, and being part of the empire, what sort of impact did that have on Scotland, both socially, economically, politically? Okay, so that is your exam. Now, your assignment. Now, your assignment again is a research project similar to National 5. You will again have time in class and at home to research this. The topic is your choice, but we strongly recommend it is one of the topics which we will cover at higher, either from the Cold War or from Britain 1851 to 1951. As mentioned, you'll have time to research this in class and at home. You will have a research sheet which you can take in with you, and you'll have 90 minutes, so 1 hour 30 minutes to write up your final assignment under exam conditions in class. Again, this is worth 30 marks, so a very, very important part of higher history. Now, in terms of in class, what sort of things you'll be doing, the main activities which we will focus on, also everything we're learning is geared towards the exam, so essay practice and source question practice. So when it comes to the Scottish topic, when we cover the section in the Scottish topic, we will always be looking at source question practice. We'll be working on exam skills. And when it comes to learning about the Cold War and Britain, it will be geared towards essay practice. Now, main activities that you'll be doing in class, again similar to what you've done at National 5, you'll have research projects to carry out. They will be both group tasks and individual tasks for you to carry out, presentations that you'll be asked to put together, and we'll have documentaries to watch as well. That's just some of the activities that you will be doing. Now, all the presentations that we will be using for higher history will always be available for you either in SourceF or on Microsoft Teams. That doesn't mean that you come to class and you don't need to write anything at all. Okay, you will still be asked to take notes from presentations or be writing your jotter for certain activities as well. Now, taking notes from presentations, trying to listen, to think, to read from the slides and write notes at the same time, it's not just difficult, it's plain impossible. So cut down on the amount of notes you take in lessons and do more listening. Okay, it's important that you are listening to what we are going over. As I said, these PowerPoints will be available for you on Microsoft Teams and on SourceF for you to access afterwards should you want to add any more to your notes. There will be times in class when you're told to take notes or told to write things in your jotter, but you do need to make sure that you are listening as well. Don't just copy from the slides if they're going to be available elsewhere. As I said, for you to either print out or in a handout or for you to access. Skim read any handouts so you know if they include things like dates, key people and historiography. Using a highlighter always helps with that as well. Make sure your notes are brief and be selective. Keep your notes well spaced so you can see individual points and add more details later if necessary. Having your notes well organised and very neat is very important. Use your own words to summarise, so imagine someone has asked you, so what did someone say about this, and write down your reply. Illustrations, examples and diagrams can help to put ideas in a practical context, so you lay out your notes how you feel is best. Make them memorable, so make sure you use colour. If you want to use pattern, highlighting, underlining things, anything at all that you feel makes your notes a bit more memorable and helps you. Develop your own structure or notation or acronyms. So for example, if you're learning about the government, you can shorten that to GOVT dot, or between, you can shorten that as well. So that's just some examples there. And read through your notes to make sure they're clear. Will you still understand them when you come to revise? That is the important part here. They are your notes, you need to make sure that they make sense to help you to revise. Now, before class, before you come to higher history, what should you be doing? What you do before and after class can be as important as what you do during them. If you can anticipate the main points, you will find the class easier to understand and you will have a better idea of when something is worth taking a note of. So, think about the title and outline description of the class and how this connects to the rest of the module. Okay, so what we are learning. Think about what you know about the topic already and what you expect or hope to learn from the class. If it's a completely new topic, try to get a basic idea of what it's about beforehand, so make sure you complete as much note making as possible beforehand. So if you know nothing about the Cold War and you're told tomorrow we will be looking at this part of the Cold War, even if it's 10 minutes afterwards when you go home at night, just having a look over, taking some brief notes to familiarise yourself with what we will be covering. This will help you to understand the topic in a lot more detail. During class, as has always been the expectation, especially for higher as well, make sure that you arrive on time. So the beginning of the class should always outline the main aims of the class and the topic. So if you arrive late to class and we're already halfway through our first activity, that means you're already falling behind. So you need to make sure that you arrive on time. If for any reason you know a certain day that you're not going to be on time, you need to make the teacher aware of that. Listen for cues to the shape or structure of the class to help you to organise your notes. So for instance, today we shall be looking at, I'm going to discuss 3 main aspects of, now I want you to move on to, I do want to emphasise, to sum up. Listen to these cues and that will be very important. Identify any key words. So for instance, notice when words or phrases are being repeated. If you're not sure about certain words or their meaning, then it's a good idea to note them down in your jotter. Underlining, circling them in your notes, any words that seem to be really significant or any words that seem to sum up the overall message are all very, very important. Be an active listener, not a sponge, so try to connect what is being said to what you already know. This is when the preparation bit comes in handy. Ask yourself, do I agree? How does it fit in with what I already knew? Am I surprised? If not, why not? How did he or she get to that conclusion? Now remember, you are all historians. It is your job to challenge what you're being told about certain aspects, certain opinion about things that we're learning as well. So make sure that you can connect ideas and you can challenge them as well. And write down any questions you have as you listen, and these can be addressed later on or the following lesson. Now, how to be an active listener. Listen and understand are often more important than trying to make lots of notes. So focus on the teacher rather than having your head down scribbling notes. Listen actively by thinking about what you are hearing. So what questions are being raised? Do you agree with what has been said? What evidence is there to support this? Does it link to anything you have come across before? Again, look for clues. If the teacher lists, repeats or summarises something, it is likely to be important. Pay attention to the lecture's introductions and conclusions, as these also tell you what is important. If you lose track of what has been said, don't just switch off or worry about what you may have missed. Listen carefully to the next section of the lesson. You may even find that you can work out what you've missed. Okay, so please don't worry if you think, oh, I've missed this out or missed that out. You're still in the class, you're still in the lesson. You can always ask. Now, after class in higher history, you should always put some time aside soon after the class to sit down somewhere quiet and consider what you've just learned to make sure you can consolidate your learning. Summarise and write down what you think were the main points in a few sentences. Add anything you need or want to find out more about and any questions that may have raised in your mind. So again, that's where having access to the PowerPoints on SourceF and Microsoft Teams will come in handy. Follow up anything that you think is really important. So research the answers yourselves, discuss it with a friend, make a list of questions to raise, ask your teacher if you're really confused and can't find the answer elsewhere. Then file your notes away carefully so you can find them when you need them for assignments or revision. That is where having a folder comes in to be very, very important. You need to have a folder in higher history to organise all of your notes. Now, a few warnings. Doodling. Now, some people believe that doodling helps to improve memory. Now, use your own discretion when you're doodling or doing other activities that distract from focusing entirely on the lesson. So it can be perceived as you are not listening or are bored, especially in smaller classes. So if you feel that doodling maybe helps sometimes, then yes, fair enough, but don't be sitting there doodling away the whole lesson and appear like you're not listening. Distracting. So avoid doing anything at all that might distract you or others from taking notes, such as tapping your feet, shaking your legs, pen flipping. These activities break eye contact and concentration with the teacher, and they're also out to annoy those around you. Therefore, if you learn best while tapping your foot, find a more isolated spot to sit in the class and keep it quiet. Packing up. If you are gathering together your personal belongings when you should be listening, you're bound to miss an important point, or perhaps worse, insult the teacher. So only be packing up when you're told to pack up. Class discussions provide you with significant overviews of the topic studied and an opportunity to have topics explained to you and important points emphasised. So listen actively and allow others to do the same. Class discussion is very, very important, and it is vital that you are listening during this time.